All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Patrick Baker, and this is Senior Tech Coffee. Thank you for joining me today. Our topic is smart home tech for independent living. And Senior Tech Coffee is brought to you by myself and Prime of Life Tech. I provide IT education for older adults, as well as technical support for small businesses, senior care providers, and our older adult community as well. So let's just briefly discuss what we're going to talk about today. So smart home tech, or the Internet of Things, as you may have heard it referred to, um, what is that all about? So we'll talk about, what exactly is smart home tech. We'll also discuss, what kind of problems are we trying to solve by using this technology. We'll talk about some examples of smart home tech solutions that you could deploy in an older adult's home. And then we'll just address some of the security and privacy issues that are surrounding the use of this kind of technology, as well as some safety considerations for our older adult community. So let's first dive into what is smart home technology. Basically, what it is are network and internet connected devices that you can install in your home. They will automate or enhance many common tasks, basic things like turning on your lights, for example, playing music, but could also be used to uh, summon emergency contacts, reach out to your primary caregiver, and that sort of thing, as well as staying connected with family and friends. Um, these devices are typically managed with mobile apps that are either specific to the devices themselves, and sometimes we also have like a home management type app. Both Apple and Google have such a thing that basically lets you control all of your smart tech from one place. Um, they are also remote control capable through these apps. So, for example, and this is something that I used to do all the time, I'd leave the house, I'd forget to close the garage door, or I would think I forgot to close the garage door. And, and in those moments of doubt before any of this technology existed, I'd have to turn around and go home and visually see, did I actually close the garage door or not? It was about 50-50 actually. So it would have been nice to have an app to just tap on a button and close that for me. Anyhow, so remote capability, but that's also, and we'll get into some of the details of how that is useful in this context. They're also voice command capable. So I can use my smart speaker, or I can use the digital assistant on my mobile devices to control these things. The notifications and alerts that we can receive from these mobile apps are really helpful for adult children and caregivers who want to essentially do a passive remote check-in, as it were, with their older adult relatives or people they're caring for. And um, we'll get into some of the specifics about that here in a few minutes. Um, and so essentially, these are part of what's known as the Internet of Things. So these are devices that are internet connected, as I mentioned in the beginning, and we'll get into some of the details of how that all plays out here in just a moment. So what are some of the devices that we have available that are going to help us here? First off, as I mentioned, smart speakers and displays. So essentially, a smart display is like a dedicated tablet type device that has a digital assistant built in. There are smart plugs that you can use that you can control any device that uses electricity through an app and using one of these plugs. So that's pretty handy. Um, but there are also light bulbs that can be connected to your home network, and you can control these light bulbs as well as the type of light they emit. And they also have some fun things you can do with those types of things. Um, Security cameras and home security systems, those are also devices that can be plugged into your home network and can be utilized in a home care context for older adults. Um, Folks have probably heard of the Ring doorbells that have a camera built in so that you can essentially see who's at the door without even leaving your chair. So that's pretty handy. There are door locks that you can use that enable you to remotely lock or unlock the door, kind of like my garage door scenario. And there actually are smart garage door openers as well. Um, and then the thermostats, like the Nest. You've probably heard of the Google Nest. That allows you to control your climate control within your house, also through these apps. In addition, there are appliances that can be controlled with smart technology. So things like your refrigerator, but as well, there are also laundry facilities, washers and dryers that can be smart controlled. Sprinkler controllers. You can essentially replace your existing sprinkler controller with a smart sprinkler controller. It's actually a local company. I always mess up the name. I want to say it sounds like Radish, Ratio. That's it. Anyway, they're like a Boulder company, I believe, and it's a sprinkler controller that you can control through an app. Robotic vacuums and lawnmowers. We have, it's not a smart one, but we have one of the robotic vacuums at my house, and we've named it Rosie after the Jetsons robot Maid that you may remember from the cartoon. Anyhow, but the smart version of those can also be controlled with apps. And then there's a variety of smart sensors that can be used in the context of senior care. And we'll get into some of the applications for some of the sensors that I have listed here in just a moment. And again, if you have any questions, please speak up. So what are we trying to solve by deploying smart technology in our older adults' homes? So first off, probably the main thing and the most important thing is to help our older adult community maintain a sense of independence, a state, the ability to basically have control of their environment and to feel like that they are in control of their lives still. It can help them maintain their daily routines in a variety of different ways, which we'll get into here in just a moment. We can automate or make common tasks easier to do, but we can also promote health, safety, and security through the use of some of these devices, and also improve the amount of information that our family members and caregivers receive about our elders' well-being. We can help them stay engaged and connected with other people. That's really important right now with COVID and the lockdown situation that most older adults still find themselves in, especially in a facility where they don't have the ability to go out and engage in the community as much. And then finally, maintaining some security and privacy for older adults in terms of how they interact with the internet and the way these devices essentially can, on the one hand, open up some vulnerabilities within the home in terms of allowing access to the home network. We'll talk about some ways that we can stave off those security issues here at the end of the program. So what are some solutions that we can deploy in the homes for older adults when they want to utilize this kind of technology? So let's talk first about daily routines. One of the most important things for anyone really, but especially for our older adult community, is maintaining a daily routine. Things that they do on a regular basis, but also things that they need to do on a regular basis, like medication reminders, being reminded to have a meal, or even hydration. Big deal. Hydration for everyone, but particularly for our older adult community, as well as activity reminders. Now, everyone here probably uses some type of calendaring system, whether it's a notebook that you write your appointments and your reminders down in, or maybe you've transitioned to the electronic equivalent of that, things like Google Calendar and all of the features that it has in terms of, or the Apple version for that matter, with different types of reminders, things you can schedule. All of these things can be done using smart speakers and the digital assistants that come with them, as well as smart displays, which also have these digital assistants built in. So and my phone's going to go off when I say this, when I say, okay, Google, or if you just mind your own business. So when I say that, or when I say, hey Siri, and my MacBook is going to fire off its own version of that. You can essentially say, remind me to take my medication at 3 o'clock every day, and it will speak up and remind you at that particular time to take your medication. The other thing that we can do, especially, and this is really useful in a smart display kind of setting, or even if folks, our elder folks, are using things like tablets and smartphones. You can set up these reminders, and you can actually check them off by tapping the screen, and that provides some feedback to the family and the caregiver, so that they know that, oh yeah, Dad took his medication today at 3 o'clock, or Dad ate lunch today. Dad got his hydration reminder, and he actually drank a glass of water. Those kinds of things, which they're important things that our elders need to do on a routine basis. So how do we communicate? Yes, please.
Quick question. So you were talking about setting reminders, but how do you actually learn that they ate lunch or that they drank a glass of water? Is that self-reporting?
This would be in terms of self-reporting, right?
Okay.
Yeah, we don't yet have well, there's some different things that we could utilize there to automate that, but for the most part, what I'm referring to, especially like with a smart display or using things like Google reminders and that sort of thing, it would be self-reporting. It would be tapping the screen to check the box that says, yes, I drank a glass of water at 10 a.m., that type of thing.
And then how does that, I know how that works generally because I do it on my phone, but how does that then report to the caregiver or the family member?
Well, in that particular example that I'm using, you would basically be like sharing the calendar, as it were, with, or sharing the task list with the caregiver or with the family member, so they could actually log in and view the reminders, view the calendar, and see which things did they actually check off. You could ask them about it later on, because I know that people don't always necessarily check the box when they're doing something. So it's certainly not foolproof. It's not like we have a camera that's recording their every move. We could do that, but that's probably a little invasive for a lot of people. But yeah, this is mostly self-reporting. It could also be the type of thing where if you have a caregiver visiting the older person, where they could also help out in that reporting situation, where they could check the box by just quizzing the person that they're caring for and asking them if they did the things that they did. Of course, we get into issues with memory. where we have memory care situation, that could be, you know, a little more difficult. So, but that's generally also someone who's going to have probably a little higher degree of, um, I want to say supervision, but I'm also trying not to. I'm also trying to be sensitive to the folks who are in that situation. Anyhow, so how do we communicate these reminders to the older person in the home? Certainly, we can rely on smartphone notifications, which are only good when you've got the device sitting right in front of you, right? So having something like a smart speaker that announces that a reminder for whatever the activity is, that's definitely something that is a useful option. The digital assistants, generally, um, if you position those strategically, like next to mom's favorite chair where she also happens to watch television, those reminders can pop up on the digital display. It'll wake up and also verbally announce the particular reminder. There's also a technology out there, a product called Hey Herbie, that um, plugs into their TV and also has a reminder function that would just throw an alert up on the screen so that they can see right there on the TV while they're while they're watching the British baking show or the morning news that hey, it's time for medication. Um, they these things utilize the digital assistants that we've discussed before, Siri and the Google Assistant. And then also the smartwatches, they can also flash a reminder, and they would have the vibration feature, the haptic feedback as it's known, that would buzz on their wrist essentially, and they would know to look down and see, oh yeah, it's time to take my medication. So as far as making common tasks easier, how does this technology help us in this regard? First off, having you probably, some of you who are old enough to remember the clapper, right? Clap on, clap off, that type of thing. You can basically use your voice rather than clapping your hands with the smart speakers and the smart displays to turn off lights in the various parts of the house, or on or off. If you have multiple smart plugs or smart bulbs deployed in various parts of the house, you basically can create these zones, if you will. So you can define what is the master bedroom or what is the dining room or the kitchen, and you can say, turn on the lights in the kitchen. The speakers and the digital assistants on phones and smart displays, they all use a wake word. So when I say, and I'm not going to say it just because I don't want my devices to wake up around me. But when I summon Google Assistant or when I summon Siri in the appropriate manner, I can then say, do this thing. And they only really respond to the wake word. But again, from the security perspective, they're always listening, right? They're always listening for the wake word. Are they always recording what you say? No. That is a concern with using these kinds of devices from the privacy and security standpoint. They will record your command that you give them after you wake them up, but only for long enough to actually execute the command. There were some issues I think it was mostly last year and in previous years where, for example, Google or Amazon employees were reviewing recordings from smart speakers, mostly from a quality control perspective and trying to assess the accuracy of how their devices were working. But it was still concerning to enough people that they changed those practices. Um, that to my knowledge anyway, I haven't looked in the news recently on this particular subject, but I think they've, for the most part, stopped recording things. And there's also some ways that we can control what they retain, and we'll talk about that here when we get to the security piece in a little more detail. What are some other common tasks? Um, the climate control. So if I can tell my Nest thermostat to set the temperature to a certain, degree, like set it to 70 degrees. And then if my AC or my heat kicks in at that point, I've got a setting there. I can also just do that from my tablet or my phone. I can tell my smart speaker to, play my local public radio station or to play a certain kind of music on, various music services. Spotify comes to mind. Um, Vacuuming, lawn mowing, watering the lawn, um, reaching out and contacting friends and family. These are all common tasks that these devices can help us to basically make it easier through partial or total automation. Um, what are some of the health, safety, and security tasks or purposes that these devices can do for us? Well, one thing, and this I actually got to or heard about an incident where this was actually used in action. The calling emergency contacts. My father-in-law had a fall at his home recently. Fortunately, he wasn't seriously injured, um, but he asked his Amazon Echo to call my wife's brother so that he could, get the care that he needed after a fall. So calling your emergency contacts through a smart speaker or a smart display. That's one thing that these devices can do well. Um, Preventing kitchen fires. There are devices that you can install. Either they can be wired into the range in the kitchen, or it can just be a smart plug that you use that is configured to use the 220 volt power that most of the kitchen appliance, or that the your range, your oven and stove will use. Those types of things can be set up so that they either have like a threshold in terms of, usually in terms of time, where it only allows the stove to be on for so much time before has to be some sort of intervention on the user's part so that they don't, start a fire in their own kitchen.
So where do we
Uh,
get those? Is that available at Home Depot or?
So there's a variety of devices that are available for that purpose.
Okay.
Um, there's one that I know of that is an actual smart device, and the others generally are usually just have a timer on them. And I can give you some information independent of this discussion. So let me just make a note of that you'd like some more information on that.
Thank you.
And then, so fall detection. There are some devices that you can install in the home that will detect falls, but also there's the Apple Watch. The Apple Watch has a built-in accelerometer, which basically means that it knows when there's a fall. And it actually will. There was a story from last winter about a like this 90-year-old man in Nebraska who he fell off a ladder. He was like doing something in his barn and he fell off the ladder. I'm not sure why a 90-year-old man feels compelled to climb a ladder, but I'm not going to question that, because again, it's a matter of self-actualization, right? Anyhow, fortunately, he was wearing his Apple Watch. He was unconscious at the time, and so what happens when you fall and you're wearing the Apple Watch is that basically an alert pops up and it's going to give you, I think it counts down, I want to say to 30 seconds, gives you 30 seconds to either cancel the emergency call if you happen to be conscious and you can take care of yourself. But if you're not conscious, it will initiate an emergency call. And that's what happened in this case. And he got the care that he needed and he was apparently fine. But back in the old days, of course, if he had been alone, who knows how things could have turned out in that particular context. Um, uh, so smart devices and the accompanying apps can also help in monitoring our elders' well-being. And this doesn't necessarily have to be with a particular smart device. There are apps that you can use on the smartphone to, for example, track your water consumption so that you know that your mom or your dad or the person you're caring for is staying hydrated. Of course, that does require manually entering that information. But also things like like wearables, like a Fitbit or even like an Apple Watch, in combination with the associated fitness apps, you can you can see by sharing that information out with your family or with your caregiver, did dad take a walk today? Did he at least get in 5,000 steps or 2,000 steps or 100 steps? Whatever your goals are there, you can keep track of that with some of these apps and the wearable devices. Um, in terms of home security, things like cameras, um, motion detectors, all of these types of devices can be utilized to improve the security in the home, but also to keep caregivers, family, and even the older person themselves informed about activities around their house, all by utilizing the apps and things. So you can, for example, look at the video stream from your Ring doorbell to see, oh yeah, Amazon delivered a package, or oh yeah, it's Meals on Wheels that just arrived. Those types of things. And then also avoiding lockouts. So leaving the house, if the door automatically locks behind me and I have a smart lock, I can use my app to unlock the house, or I can call my son and say, hey, I forgot to lock the house, or I am locked out of my house. Can you open it for me? If they're not totally clear on how to do those operations for themselves. But in addition, there are some things that you can utilize with some of the smart sensors, like these smart door and window type sensors. So for example, let's say that when dad gets up in the morning, he always opens this one particular cabinet in the kitchen to get the coffee and make himself a pot of coffee. You could install a, a smart sensor on the cabinet door so that if I'm living 2 states away or half a continent away, I can get an alert on my phone that tells me, yep, dad opened the cabinet where he keeps the coffee, therefore I know that dad's up and around and he's doing okay this morning. Same type of thing can be done with like motion sensors. Anyhow, in addition, there's some some strategies that you can use uh, to utilize some of the smart devices and improve some of the health and safety concerns that you might have. Things like installing multiple smart speakers throughout the home. So if your older person is relying on the presence of a smart speaker, for example, to get some emergency assistance, um, you can have multiple ones of those deployed throughout the home so that they have the ability to call out for help if regardless of where they are in the home. As I mentioned before, utilizing door and window sensors, not only just for the security side of things, but also for routine monitoring, like, like the example I gave before. Did dad open the kitchen cabinet where the coffee's kept? Um, and then some of the fall detection technology. I mentioned the Apple Watch example and the gentleman in Nebraska. But also there's a dedicated device called the Wallabot, which essentially uses a, um, a type of, it's not really it's more of a motion sensor type technology, but it's the type of thing that you can install in the bathroom where the majority of the falls occur for older adults, statistically speaking. That device could be installed in the bathroom or anywhere in the home, and an alert is issued to whoever subscribes to that particular app, and will inform the caregiver or a family member that someone has fallen in the presence of that sensor. Um, and I was reading the other day about, and this is more really kind of on the high end in terms of uh, the expense, the cost, but there are actual sensors that you can install in the floor of the home that will detect a fall. So it might also detect if you happen to, you know, drop one of those really thick phone books, which nobody gets anymore. But so depending on what you drop, there might be a false positive there. But I just thought it was interesting that you could install sensors in the floor for that type of fall detection. Anyhow, the popular smart speakers that are out there, I'm just going to give some examples of some of the tech that we've been discussing. The Amazon Echo Dot, as well as the Echo, which is like the one that looks like a canister, a cylinder. The Google Home, or Nest, as it's known now, Apple HomePod. Um, you know, the Amazon products use the Alexa digital assistant. The Google products use the Google Assistant, and of course, the Apple HomePod uses Siri. So you might make your selection of smart speaker based on what digital assistant you might already be using, or what might already be on your uh, the elder person's smartphone or tablet. The Sonos smart speaker is the only one that lets you pick. It actually supports both the Apple and the Google digital assistants, and you just choose whichever one you want to use. So that's pretty handy. Um, the I don't remember the name of the specific device, but the one that you see in the illustration there on the right, that's the 220 smart plug that you can use in your kitchen for the stove, the range, and the oven. Anyhow, in terms of these stovetop and oven sensors, the features that they often have are, as I mentioned before, a timer, but they also have a motion sensor, some of them, so that as long as there's, it detects movement in the kitchen, it won't shut itself off. Um, some of them also have smoke detectors built in, so that if, dad dad puts a hamburger in the skillet on the stovetop and then walks away for 10 minutes. There's a smoke detector that can that shut off the stove, and they all have this auto shut off capability based on either the timer or some of these other sensor inputs. They can resume operation automatically or manually, depending on the specific model of device. And then there's the smart monitoring, smart plug type capability that lets you monitor using an app, whether or not the stove is still on, or whether there's an alert type situation, or if it just shut itself off, you want to know that. As far as staying engaged and connected, here we are in the Zoom call right now, having this discussion. We're all over the place. I'm assuming you're all in the Denver metro area where I'm at, but that doesn't have to be the case. Likewise, with our older adult community, they can utilize things like tablets, smartphones, the smart display that you see on the right side of the slide here, desktop computers, laptops, Zoom, FaceTime. There's so many options out there. And as I mentioned, the Hey Herbie product before with the reminders on the TV, you can also, with that product, install a webcam, and you can basically have the equivalent of a Zoom call right there on the TV, where the older person can just look at their TV, they can see who's on the other end of the call, and then you just prop the camera up on the top of the TV so that the caregiver or the family member can see how their older adult person is doing on the call. So how are some of the ways that this technology can help keep our family and caregivers informed about the well-being of older people? Well, as I mentioned before, you've got the sensor notifications. So this would be things like the smart stove plug, things like the fall detection devices. What the door and window sensors that you can use on a kitchen cabinet. There's a product in development by a woman in the Boulder area that detects hot water usage. It's still in development, but essentially what it is a sensor that you attach to your hot water heater, and it basically reports that hot water is being used in the home. So that could be another example of, hey, I get this alert that, oh, dad must be up and around and he's taking his shower this morning, that kind of thing. You can utilize the video chat capability for remote check-ins. So you could, as the family member or the caregiver, initiate a video call and check in with the person that you're caring for. My father-in-law, who's 89, the guy who fell last week, he basically does a text message broadcast to all of his kids in the morning so that they know that he's up and around, that type of thing. But in addition, there's things like the motion detectors, smart motion detectors that will let you know that, yes, there's activity in the house this morning, those types of things. The direct communication, as I mentioned before, whether it's, messaging on a smart display or a smartphone or tablet, the video chat. Apparently, I was just reading this yesterday, the Amazon smart speakers are now HIPAA compliant, apparently. So you can essentially communicate information through the smart speaker. This could be for example, you could tell it to initiate a call with your physician or with your nurse practitioner, as from the perspective of the older person. They could initiate these calls through the smart speaker. They can have a conversation about about how they're doing, about their health, and and it's secure enough for HIPAA compliance. Um, also telemedicine using smart displays. Um, there are you have to pay. I think you have to pay extra for it, but Zoom, I want to say, has a HIPAA compliant um, subscription, I guess would be the right word to use for that. Um, Also, tracking medication consumption. There are smart dispensers that you can use. You know how you've got the pill dispenser Monday, Sunday through Saturday, and you flip the top and dump out the pills. I use those for traveling, for the stuff that I take on a regular basis. Um, but you've probably seen those before. Well, there's a smart one of those that you can use to actually track the consumption. Anyhow, in addition, as I mentioned before, tracking physical activity through wearables and the associated apps, um, tracking nutrition and meal times, mostly through self-reporting, but you can also utilize, there are entire systems that you can use um, with some different products that are out there where the caregiver can actually track all of this stuff, and then the family can see reports that essentially indicate, are they getting their meals at the right times? Are they getting the right hydration throughout the day? Those types of things. As I mentioned earlier, programming emergency contacts into the phone itself, or I'm sorry, into the smart speakers and displays so that they can initiate an emergency call. Um, and you can also, by the way, and this is something that my wife's family has utilized for my father-in-law, um, you can set up a well, first off, if you're not familiar with it, there's a product out there called Google Voice that basically lets you um, you can essentially have a free extra phone number, as it were. And my wife's family set up a Google Voice account and a specific number for my father-in-law, and they programmed Siri to use, or actually it's probably Alexa, to use that specific number. And the reason they did that is that they know that if they get a call from dad at this specific number, they know it's the emergency number, right? And not just like his regular phone number on his smartphone. Um, so anyway, that's another option for uh, keeping family informed, especially in emergency situations. And as I mentioned before, with the remote monitoring, um, you can keep tabs on their daily routines. You can make sure that they've got, the right the right temperature going in terms of climate control in the house, so that if we're going through a heat wave, you want to make sure that dad doesn't have his uh, you know temperature in the house set to like 85 degrees, for example. um, Things like door locks rather, stove usage, and then all the video doorbell contacts. So there's a finite amount of storage for the recordings on video doorbells. But if you had a question about whether, for example, did did the in-home healthcare person show up at 3 o'clock yesterday like they were supposed to, you can actually check the doorbell and the logs there, those types of things. Did they get a package delivered yesterday morning? And if so, who delivered it? That type of thing. So let's go a bit into some of the security, privacy, and safety aspects of using this technology in the home. Um, so when this stuff first came out, or and even since then, there have been stories about devices being essentially like a hacking vector for, in other words, someone with ill intent could find and exploit a weakness on one of these smart devices and gain access to someone's home network, and by extension, also potentially gain access to their computers, their personal information, whatever's stored on the computer, that type of thing. Those are all legitimate concerns. So, what are some things that you can do? And this isn't just for older adults, but if you're using this, if you're a younger person using smart technology in your home, what are some strategies that you can utilize to prevent unauthorized access to these devices, to your home network, and your computer, and ultimately your personal data? So first off, and most important, use a secure Wi-Fi network at home. What does that mean? That basically means that it's set up so that you have to use a password to get on your home network. Don't leave your home network open so that anyone can attach a device, log on to your network without requiring some sort of authorization. By extension, use a strong password for accessing your home network. What's a strong password? A strong password is generally a password between 10 and 20 characters in length, and it uses a combination of upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and the symbols that are on your keyboard, like a exclamation point or the at sign or a dollar sign, those types of things. Um, Consider setting up a separate wireless network for your Internet of Things devices. Um, a lot of routers allow you to set up like a guest network, is often referred to. You're using the same network hardware, the same Wi-Fi router that you're using for your main network. So you're not buying extra equipment to accomplish this. It's basically setting up an additional parallel network with its own password and all that stuff that you can attach your devices to. Um, Making sure that you keep the firmware on your network hardware and your devices, your smart devices, updated. Firmware is the software that's embedded in the device itself. Usually we don't have much, if any, direct interaction with the firmware, or if we do, it's not even really something we think about. When I log into my wireless network at home, on some level, I'm interacting with that firmware. Um, anyway, periodically, just like with like Windows updates or updates to your Mac OS, or on your phones, on your smartphone or tablet, um, these devices need their firmware, their embedded software updated, just to deal with things like bug fixes and so forth, but also, and most importantly, security issues that are being addressed by these updates. In addition, making sure that the smart home apps themselves are updated. Oftentimes, there are security issues that are discovered with the apps themselves that need to be addressed through some type of update. Making sure that you only share your login credentials or data through these apps with trusted people. So you don't just give out that information to just anyone. You want to make sure that it's someone that you trust. Also, you have the option to opt out of data sharing for these smart home devices. You've probably seen the checkbox in different types of apps. Even Windows and Mac OS, I think, has the ability to, well, they have the option for you, the user, to share your utilization data with the company that produces the device or the software that, or the service that you're using. I always opt out of sharing my data with with anybody. I just do that. Um, and so it's just uh, one less, I guess, vector, as it were, for getting to my information that I have control over. And it's my preference, my personal preference, not to share that utilization data with these companies. Anyhow, that is the gist of the presentation today. And if you have any other questions, please please speak up and unmute yourselves.
Thanks, Patrick. That was great information. There's some new things to think about.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. And sometimes the questions don't come up until you've had some time to think about this stuff. I totally get it. You can contact me directly or through Meetup if some questions occur to you. In addition, I just want to point out that I've got some other events coming up here in the next few weeks. A couple of the events that I'm doing are guest speaking engagements with the Malley Center, which is a senior focused rec center in Englewood. I'll be talking about older adults and social media tomorrow morning. And then next week, a presentation on securing your passwords and some different things to consider as far as how you utilize your passwords, and then some tips about selecting a password manager to help you keep track of your passwords. And then in November, I'll be back with the next episode of Senior Tech Coffee, and we'll be talking about online safety and security for older adults. So what are some strategies that our elders can utilize so that they can prevent things like they can avoid phishing attacks, they can avoid online fraud, those types of things. Anyway, you can go to the website to check that out, both Meetup, and there's also this link takes you to the Senior Tech Coffee link takes you to my website. Speaking of which, this is my contact information if you'd like to reach me or follow me on social media. And I will I'll be making this presentation available as a PDF for download. And I'll make the recording available if you would like to share this with folks who weren't able to attend today and be able to access this information. And I thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And let me just see, we got something in the chat. Oh, so thank you. So I appreciate it. Thanks, Jessica. I appreciate that. I'm going to stop sharing. And so, yeah, I appreciate everyone joining today. Always a pleasure to deliver this content. And again, if I can answer any questions for you, feel free to hit me up. And I hope to see you again at a future Senior Tech Coffee. So thanks everyone for attending and have a great day.
Thank you.